Welcome back to The Directors, a special segment of the Cancer Letter podcast. The Directors is sponsored by ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology. This time, we are joined by two leaders of NCI Community Oncology Research Program, or NCORP sites. NCORP is a national NCI-supported network that brings cancer clinical trials and cancer care delivery research studies to people in their communities. Amarinthia Curtis, the medical director of Gibbs Cancer Center and Research Institute and the PI of Upstate Carolina NCORP, and Jeffrey Berenberg, a co-PI of the Hawaii Minority and Underserved NCORP and the core clinical member for Translational and Clinical Research of the University of Hawaii Cancer Center, talk about how in the U.S. cancer enterprise, bureaucracy is increasing and clinical research is becoming harder to run efficiently. With that, let's get started.
Welcome to the May episode of The Directors. And with us today, we have Dr. Amarinthia Curtis, the medical director of Gibbs Cancer Center and Research Institute and the PI of Upstate Carolina NCORP, and Dr. Jeffrey Berenberg, who is a co-PI of the Hawaii Minority and Underserved NCORP, and as well as the core clinical member for Translational and Clinical Research of the University of Hawaii Cancer Center. And it's really wonderful to have you here because we've never really had NCORP chairs and PIs on the directors, and you do so much in this universe of cancer research. So my first question is, I usually ask, what is it that's keeping you up at nights? I think I'm going to ask it differently, and that is, what are you proudest of in May of 2026?
I'll just take one thing. I'm proudest of, working really with the disparate communities in our catchment area, in Hawaii. The thing that specifically, I'll answer it specifically, and Amy probably will answer it a little more generally, but we participated in the TMIS trial, which is a screening trial of comparing tomosynthesis with classical, more regular mammography, and we accrued a very large number of patients. But the thing that really that made me proud is that we reached out to the Micronesian community that are recent immigrants to Hawaii, and only 20% of these people had ever had a mammogram, and we worked with the outreach section of the Cancer Center and our CRA staff, and we recruited for, a significantly high percentage of patients. It was very difficult. It took a lot of time, but it was really true. It was really a true expression of what the NCORP are meant to do, is really to really broadly reach your community. And it felt really special to me. It was a long project. We worked with the NCI initially to help get it started, but I felt this is really kind of where we want to be. So that's what I'm most proud of. Sorry I interrupted, Amy.
I think that's a wonderful example. I was going to answer more generally that I think the NCORP and what I'm most proud of is the bidirectional symbiotic relationship that on one hand, the NCORP is really jet fuel for the national research agenda. About a third of accruals on NCTN trials come from NCORP sites. So we're really able to power trials to completion and collect data from a wide population. But then the other is the dissemination into the community, that we're able to be the hands and feet of cancer advances, really in populations that are sometimes hard to reach. And I think your example is a really good one, that there are patients that are never going to travel to an academic medical center. It really may not travel further than a couple dozen miles away from home, but the NCORPs are there to provide cancer care and cancer research to those populations. And I'm really, really proud of that. I think it's a special niche in the cancer ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the TMIS trial, which was almost stopped by NCI, and it's now really doing incredibly well with their accrual. That wouldn't have happened without NCORPs.
Right. It closed in the last year, but many NCORPs really were able to accrue quite well. But it really took a personal effort because of the belief system of many radiologists who just, whatever is the newest is the best. And maybe you're overdiagnosing, and maybe some cancers would never really develop. So really we felt strongly that this question had to be answered, and we were able to get a radiologist, in the community who was positive about it. Towards the end, there was a new radiologist who was like questioning it, but fortunately he was willing to, continue. But yeah, you're right. It's a difficult trial. I think even the PI, this might be wrong, but maybe you should validate this. I think she had difficulty even getting the study open at her own institution, the national PI. I think I heard her say that once, but that I would definitely verify that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a rough beginning, in part because of COVID. So, Amy, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. I think we also had TMIST open, and I was given the opportunity to serve as the community co-chair for TMIST. And I think, again, having a community NCORP member have a seat at the table for a large national trial like this is so important. And one of the unique things about our program, I'm very excited about TMIST, both for the primary outcomes, but also that we will have a large prospective data set now. And in the future, I hope we will have more personalized screening recommendations. Right now, it's very much one size fits all. And you have to have data to build a personalized screening recommendation set. So I'm excited about that, and excited that they completed accrual. Excited about some future studies that they'll be able to do with that. We learned a lot also, like Jeff said, we learned a lot about TMIST and about our patient population. We patted ourselves on the back because we accrued a large number of African-American women in our catchment area. We matched our catchment area in terms of demographics. But when we peeled a layer off the onion, the women with an African-American background were half as likely to submit biospecimens as white women. And so we've done some focused education and outreach, but that's something that we wouldn't have known about our patient population if we weren't so deeply involved in this study, or really in any cancer research.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I should go back to my classic question, which is really the first question I always ask, and which is what is keeping you up at nights in May 2026 as you run your institution?
Mm-hmm.
You mean what isn't? I'll let Amy take that first.
Yeah.
The first thing that's keeping me up at night is workforce. Just aging population and longer survivors. I know there's now a new word, metavivors, so people who are surviving with metastatic disease. But we need lots of doctors. And I know Jeff has had a lot of success with APPs helping with research, but and we're starting to work that way also, in addition to needing more physicians to help us. I worry that if we don't have enough physicians to staff clinics and prescribe chemotherapy and aromatase inhibitors, that we also are not going to have enough physicians to put patients on clinical trials. So that keeps me up at night is the physician workforce, particularly in medical oncology. Less so for radiation oncology or surgical oncology, but medical oncology feels the most pressing right now.
Yeah, I would ditto that. So number one, even on the main, on our island, Oahu, which is, the most populated island, we have locums that are working, and they're really not been able, to participate. And those physicians have really high workload. As Amy had said, one of our PIs with us is an APP. She's a DNP. Her name is Krista Braun-Inglis, and she's like a phenomenal individual. I helped recruit her, from Kaiser, where she was working. She doesn't even have a PhD. We recruited her as an assistant professor. She's been promoted to associate professor, and we had a supplemental grant to our NCORP grant that for a pilot study, mentoring and teaching APPs on how to be involved in clinical trials. She's been involved nationally in changing the landscape for permission for APPs, and the result is there more than 50%, maybe even higher, maybe even 2/3, maybe even an abstract in ASCO that is going to deal with this. Of all of our accruals is coming from APPs in Hawaii, and that's because of the physician shortages, and that's led mostly to cancer control and CCDR because they cannot be a local PI or they cannot enroll in treatment trials. But there are even local PIs, and we even at our cancer center we have a disease site working group, which is predominantly APPs, but also there are some physicians who are screening all of these NCORP type of trials. So it's a phenomenal advance. But what's keeping me up is basically we have a lot of staffing turnover because many people are going, CRAs are going to medical school or nursing school or going into industry, and we have a financial problem because of changes here in Hawaii. And our cancer center is historically based upon treatment and in the community, the major hospitals, Queens and HBH, and we have to have a distributed model. It's relatively inefficient because our staff are going out and working with personnel in the hospitals, and we've had a lot of turnover. And because of changes in the legislature in support of our cancer center, we have financial shortages. So I would say the financial shortage is the number one thing keeping me up now. Mm-hmm. Sorry for being so winded.
Is that happening in South Carolina and North Carolina?
So I'm fortunate that I've been somewhat insulated from some of the financial pressures. I know that there are conversations about 340B, about Medicaid, but those aren't what keep me up at night. I really trust the CFOs and accountants and all of the people in the administration of our institutions to keep those things and keep the lights on. So that doesn't particularly keep me up at night. I think one thing though that does keep me up at night that's directly affected by the finances is sort of the customer service aspect for cancer care. Is that, when there are funding cuts or even when they're not, you have to have people that answer the phones. And if you're going to put somebody on a clinical trial, or even if you're not, if you want them to trust you with the radiation or the chemotherapy, you have to do what you say you're going to do. If we say we're going to order an MRI, then it's really not too much to ask for the patient to get a call the next day with an appointment for an MRI in the next week or two. But when there are staffing challenges for radiology technologists or even front desk staff, scheduling staff, prior authorization staff, some of those customer service things fall down, and that directly impacts trust. And there are a lot of trust problems in healthcare right now, and we cannot let up on that customer service, that warmth, those good handoffs that need to happen.
Mm-hmm. What about data managers? They were really in high demand from the industry and during COVID and after. And now they were the prices were being bid up and is that still an issue in the community?
Definitely. And we were definitely caught off guard by the all of the remote work and the COVID. I remember going to NCORP meetings and talking to our colleagues at Kaiser, and how they would train somebody in San Francisco and they would immediately get poached by industry. And that seemed like a California, a San Francisco problem. And I was very much surprised that it became a Spartanburg problem with all of the remote work. I think one of the things that, I guess another thing that keeps me up at night is how sometimes stifling all the regulatory and compliance burden can be. And there are so many tools for data management that we can't use. It still has to be, a person that's trained, that's on the delegation log, that's, doing the data entry. It's not as easy as, you've got an eager pre-med student and they can come in and help. Well, we've got to train them, and there is a lot of work that goes into it. Some of it is quite valuable and important, but some of it, if you take a step back, maybe we're doing it to check a box because there are so many boxes to be checked.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, what about you?
So in our system, we have different levels of CRAs. So the entry level really is data management, although they're kind of learning to be a CRA as well. And we have the same problem in terms of our workforce, just the turnover right now. I would say maybe 14, 15 years ago, we had a lot of career CRAs, very experienced, and a few nurses. And things have changed. We don't have very many career CRAs. We have mostly younger CRAs that are really preparing for medical school or nursing school. Right now we have 2 CRAs who have been with us more than 4 years out of a pretty good sized CRA pool. And that doesn't include the manager. Everyone else, and then many of them are 2 years, and then we're lucky if we can keep them for 2 years. And some of them are military spouses. And so, when their spouse, goes off the island, we have a really, really good CRA who's a pharmacy tech who worked at the military hospital, and her spouse is leaving, and she's just, about to be promoted to a CRA 3. And so her experience is going to be gone. And so that is a real problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a major issue.
Is the industry hiring them away, or do they just move, or?
More moving in new jobs, but we have had some really good CRAs gone to industry, not in the last couple of years, but earlier, post-COVID, we had several, And then we had, in fact, our manager before, she wasn't a CRA, but she was a manager and really excellent. She was like a lawyer, but she learned CCDR at one of the hospitals, and she became our manager, and she was excellent. And now she got a call, would you like to manage one trial at like 1/3 more of your salary, and you can live on the big island where her mother was living, the island of Hawaii, and you can leave Oahu, and it sounds great. So we lost, a really good manager to industry,
Mm-hmm. Is that happening with you, Amy? You're losing a bunch, or?
It's slowed down. I definitely have still some scars from post-COVID, and vividly remember one of our CRAs getting hired away by industry, and that company turned around and in the next week asked to meet with us because our accruals had slowed down, and we politely declined that meeting and pushed it out a little while. But I think on one hand, it's fantastic that there is such a vibrant research ecosystem for all of these talented people. I love that there are opportunities for people's careers to grow. And I would much rather have somebody who is, good and putting their heart into it for a short time than to not have them at all. But there is nothing like, years of experience. There's no training that can replicate that. So, but we have to adjust. That's the new reality. And so we've beefed up our training. We have more mentorship, both formal and informal. We're we're building that into our staffing models, is that it takes, we're going to have more turnover. And so we have to have managers are going to have to devote more of their time to training, which means we need more managers. So that's how we're adapting to that challenge.
Yeah. We kind of sped past Medicaid, and I can't imagine Medicaid. Maybe we should circle back for a moment to Medicaid and see have the cutbacks begun? Are they occurring to you out there in the world?
I haven't really noticed anything so far. Hawaii is fairly robust in terms of insurance coverage. There's very few people. And then one of the things that one of the former CTO directors, the clinical trial office directors, is she negotiated, with Medicaid and Medicare locally to make sure the clinical trials were being covered. So that was something that the Cancer Center did for the community. And then,
What about the physician workforce? Is that...
It's for us, I've already mentioned earlier, there's one of the larger organizations has even on Oahu at their hospitals has a number of locums physicians, and patients. It's really hard for with the turnover of the physicians. The patients don't have the relationship and the confidence that Amy was talking about. Mm-hmm. They can't really accrue to clinical trials, if they can, there has to be another physician who's willing to follow their patients. Like that, we do have one physician now who's very experienced. She's a locum, previous to coming here. But and she wanted to participate in the NCORP trials because she felt, particularly the breast cancer studies and some of the de-escalation trials that they're doing, that maybe we can talk about later on, that she wanted to accrue to these studies, but we had to get one of the permanent physicians who's also a faculty member at the Cancer Center to express the willingness to follow their patients if she goes out of town. So that's the exception to the rule. So we're really having a problem. But I think in most institutions, it's a few physicians that really believe. And like we have one young radiation oncologist who, he just is going to energy meeting. He's sending us emails all the time. What about this? What about that? I really want to do it. And we need to kind of sort of mine for more of those people. You see, maybe he'll become like Amy in the future. We're hoping in the future, he'll be maybe one of our PIs several years down the line. So there's some hope, but there are a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think relying on a broader physician workforce. So again, radiation oncology may not have the same challenges as the medical oncology workforce, but we sort of have, I guess, the peanut butter problem. People get spread too thin, and all of us oncologists are being asked to think about more things. So when a patient comes into a room, we really need to think about trials, but we also need to think about cardio-oncology and oncofertility and behavioral oncology, and all of those referrals or connections, they best happen if the physician recommends it. So we can have our navigators and we can have our nurses and we can have automatic, preset orders to refer people out to do rehab or to see a therapist. But the patient is more likely to go if the physician says, I think this would be a good idea for you. But when you have, wait times to get in to see a physician or very busy clinics, that you have to prioritize. And so sometimes those things are deprioritized, and also sometimes clinical trials are. So finding enough physicians to meet the needs in the clinic and to meet all of those other needs, I think is what is going to have to happen.
Are you actively looking to find the physicians, or are you wishing for more physicians?
Yeah, we are recruiting. We've had ads in the Cancer Letter. We've had ads in Practice Link. We have gone to ASCO. We've interviewed, it's tough to recruit to a non-metropolitan area. And ASCO has actually put out a study and an infographic saying that that's a challenge for cancer care across the United States, is that new grads are less likely to work in high need areas.
Jeff, are you having another issue?
I was going to say just that. So our cancer center is really unique because it's an NCORP, but it's also an NCI designated cancer center. But historically, all the care has been in the community, 100% of the care. Although there is a phase 1 unit that's being developed, but right now, one of the things that Dr. Ueno, who I think you interviewed him in the past, has been doing is working with some of the large hospitals to sort of co-recruit people and to get them to commit to some protected time where, these people who are interested in clinical trials can come. They can maybe serve as a lung cancer expert. Like we recently recruited a physician co-recruited a physician from Tufts who's an expert in lung cancer and melanoma, and she's going to be working on, clinical trials while practicing in the community. So that's a model that is more specific for us because we're this hybrid, disseminated NCORP Cancer Center, which is we're really unique in that regard. So we have our own problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned de-escalation studies. So maybe we should talk about that. Are there any studies that are particularly difficult right now?
Yeah, I think the one that's most difficult to recruit to, it's interesting, there's 2 studies that I could mention. One is the Offset trial, which is, I think that's energy, right, Amy? Is that right? Anyway, the Upstate trial came out of a lot of the Taylor X experience, and it's looking at premenopausal women who are node positive, but with a lower oncotype, to see whether they really because the data suggests that basically ovarian suppression probably can substitute for chemotherapy in that group. But it hasn't really been proven based on epidemiology. So it's a rough randomization. It's between hormone suppression, in ovarian suppression and hormonal therapy, plus or minus chemotherapy. It's a really important study, but it's a very hard sell. Very hard sell. On the other hand, there are studies looking at triple-negative breast cancer when omitting anthracycline. That study, with all of the results of the Keynote trial and, bringing Pembro in early on, that study is accruing okay. So, but these are studies, I think, Amy and I would both agree, that are really unique, that can be done in the NCORP and NCTN, it's NCTN trials. These studies are not studies that industry is going to be very excited about doing, maybe not using one of their drugs or, so these studies are super important. And there's other examples of those type of studies, but.
Well, and TMIST is also an example of that.
TMIST is an example too, yeah.
Because
Well, hopefully, but TMIST might end up being an escalation study. We'll see. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Amy, what are the trials you can't do? Or
we have a harder time in general with treatment trials compared to cancer control trials. And again, a lot of the treatment trials rely on medical oncologists, and we have a very engaged GU medical oncologist, so we accrue very well to GU trials. We have very engaged radiation oncologists, so we accrue well to radiation trials, particularly prostate trials. And then cancer control, our portfolio for cancer control, we have a robust relationship with Wake Forest and with URCC, those 2 research bases, and we love our colleagues there. And our patients seem really receptive to those symptom management trials, and they have for decades. So we love the scientific de-escalation or escalation or sequencing trials. And those kind of scratch our academic itch. But a lot of patients are, when they're done with their cancer treatment and they have symptoms, insomnia, stiffness, fatigue, cognitive impairment, they love that there's research to help with their symptoms. So we've kind of leaned into that because our patient population seems the most receptive to that.
Yeah, the patients, I really agree with what Amy said. And then current CIPN trial using pressure or ice compression of extremities, it's like amazing how many patients, even though Hawaii doesn't have that many, patients that have been accrued, and patients are just really, really not desperate, but, really happy to go on these kind of trials. I completely agree with Amy. We've had the same track record over the years after the very large breast cancer treatment and prevention treatment studies ended. The bulk of our accrual has been in cancer control and also CCDR trials, even though we're supposed to be 50-50. And the last 10 years, for sure, we've never made the 50-50. It's supposed to be 50. Our goal is 50% treatment and 50%, non-treatment. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. We're the same, but we've been, and we have 3 affiliates, and one of our affiliates, it's the opposite, that they're very successful with their treatment trials. For years, they had an adolescent and young adult oncologist who was quite a champion for Hodgkin's disease trials, some of the COG trials. So they were able to bump up our total NCORP accruals to treatment trials. But we just try and respond to our population, and they've really clamored for the cancer control trials and symptom management.
The number of people American cancer patients who go on clinical trials is remarkably small. It's like 2 to 3%.
I think it's increased.
It's increased. What is it now?
If you include biobanking trials, I think the percent, it's hard to know if the numbers have really increased or people using biobanking studies to kind of increase that. It might be, I don't know, more. I think Joe Unger in the most recent papers, it could be higher, like 6% or something. I'm just guessing.
But it's still a small number.
It's increased a little bit, but it's still inadequate, right?
Yeah, which I guess means that patients are not being offered that option.
No, and I think the literature shows clearly, and this is such an important point, that for all the perceived barriers, and there's so many barriers, travel and extra cost concern and fear and, Tuskegee, whatever, all these things, even in patients that are felt to be at risk, patients, such as the African American community or the geriatric community, whatever, if they're asked to participate in a trial, they're going to say yes. Now, they may have eligibility issues too, particularly the older adults, but the percentage is the same as it is in other populations, and that's something that I think the physicians and also other caregivers, probably APPs as well, they don't really accept that. They think they know better, which is wrong.
Which they don't. Yeah. What about the paperwork? Is that a big barrier, you think, or in your experience?
I think there's a certain barrier to getting studies open for sure. Like at our cancer center right now, the IRB has to seed to serve, if, otherwise you're not able to do it. And they have seeded, but we also have to have review, logistic review by our partners, hospitals, and they also go over the studies. They go beyond the Medicare coverage analysis. They do their own Medicare coverage analysis. They take a look at the trial. There's a university. Even if a trial is a CCDR trial, we have to send it over to a biosafety office who then says, we can't review it, but they still want to see the application. And then we have to send it to another regulatory office outside of our own. And then it goes through, a 2-step scientific review because we're a cancer center. and I'm talking about from that point of view. And then there's obviously, the paperwork, for patients. But for us, a lot of the problems is getting the trial open, going through all of that, even for these trials.
Yeah. And I would echo that, kind of going back to sometimes we're doing things to check a box, and we also have many layers of compliance and regulatory, an IT security committee or an IT, it seems like every time there's a concern, there's either a new meeting and committee that's formed or a new form that's created that has to be filled out. I love that the National Academies convened a meeting last year, and they put out a report saying that 40% of effort is spent on kind of the administrative regulatory compliance burden rather than doing science. And that was their estimate for academic researchers. But I think that's true for community researchers also, because we have to navigate multiple hospital systems. We have to, if there are overlapping or conflicting regulations, we have to navigate that to make sure every I is dotted and every T is crossed. We're audited by all of our research bases, and some of our hospitals audit us too. We have internal Office of Research Compliance, and that all takes time and effort. And again, if there's any discrepancy, any form that's signed late, then there's another round of emails and meetings and notes to files. That all takes time away from being with patients and promoting research.
Not to mention DTLs. If the DTL wasn't signed by that one investigator, and then you find out, well, you can't put the patient on study because they didn't do it because they don't look at their email, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Can AI help, or actually can NCI help? Who can help?
I would love for the NCI to look closely at the recommendations put forth by the National Academies. I think it would do a lot to harmonize things between, the DoD, HHS, CMS, FDA, that all have their own conflict of interest regulations. So, there's 5 different agencies that have policies about conflict of interest and how it needs to be reported and how often and what threshold is a conflict of interest. And it really takes a lot of effort to, and I'm glad it's not me. I'm glad that we have people in our hospital that are lawyers and know these regulations, but there's really
things are getting worse rather than better. I don't think they're getting better. The central IRB, the idea of that was great. You bypass your own IRB, because in the past it always used to be your IRB. They don't really have any oncology expertise. They don't really understand the study. Now we don't have that problem, but we have it seems like we have more regulation beyond the IRB. Oh my God. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah. I printed out a graph that showed that 60% of the regulations that we have were created in the past 10 years. So,
right, I wasn't aware exactly of that, but my heart, my body can feel that.
Yeah.
Can you? I'm gonna do something I usually do. Would the two of you be willing to write a guest editorial for the Cancer Letter on this?
Oh yeah, I have a good one. I have a good story, and I will save it. This will be a teaser. I will save it for my guest editorial, because I have a little anecdote that kind of encapsulates just some of the I won't say insanity, but just conflict inherent with trying to make a robust and ethical research framework, but also one that can get things done.
Well, looking at what Tony Latai is trying to do with the cancer centers, which is streamline the I guess the paperwork required for designation, or in this case redesignation, actually, and why I would think it's something that NCI should look at, but who am I? I'm just a journalist. So maybe that's something NCI should take a look at. You would think.
And I think that they are. I heard an interview with Ned Sharpless, and he tried to tackle the ballooning of regulatory compliance and other mandates for researchers. And he said he was able to extend the grant period from 5 years to 6 years, or from 6 years to 7 years. He wasn't able to actually shave anything off of the requirements, but he was able to extend the grant, which, I mean, that's a win for sure. But the fact that he was at the highest level and he knew it was a problem and wasn't able to kind of put those regulations on a diet, I think that's a little warning that it's going to be a big task.
It might have been in the cancer letter even that he said that.
Yeah, maybe so. I was like, I may have read it somewhere. Maybe, Paul, you brought it to me.
So I have another question having to do with NCI. Oh, by the way, no. Let me just wait with that one. Let's go back to AI. Can that be helpful? Because there's this kind of a movement to streamline clinical trials and move them to the community with the help of AI, but either for clinical trials, publicly funded ones, or pharma.
Yes, you can put me down as an optimist on that. I use AI every day to format my notes and dictate my notes. I have an AI scribe that has saved hours a week for me. So I think in an ethical framework, I would love to see AI help us.
Monica Bertinelli, when she was in the Alliance, she really initiated an AI collaboration, basically, so that eventually the aim was you could just, take a look at your clinical record and you wouldn't need to have the data managers, put things in that you could just kind of get all of the data from the record. I think that's okay for laboratory. I think you still need to have the caregiver physician attributions and things like that. If you don't document it in your note, the best AI is not going to be able to. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe AI would be able to tell from patient symptoms or whatever. If you had PROs and you had accurate symptoms and things like that, and then you had the labs, maybe you wouldn't really need to worry so much about the physician input. But you could gather a lot of data that way, and they're still working on that. So that is, and also in the Alliance, also there's a radiologist who has used AI to be able to develop something called G. And the G basically is, by looking at the CT scans, can calculate the tumor growth and can predict their survival really well. So maybe therapies could be changed based upon this, as well as things like biomarkers, which is a whole controversial area. I heard your other podcast recently about the ESR1 at the FDA, but yeah, so I think in certain things, but in terms of the regulatory burden and things like that, no, maybe in terms of the conduct of the trials and the assessments, AI could be helpful, not in terms of the other stuff.
I would say one of our CRAs has said that the biggest obstacle kind of to doing her job is copy and paste. A lot of physicians copy and paste their notes, and then it's hard to get an assessment about, was the patient having nausea or was it copied from the last visit? And I do think, again, having an AI scribe, the patient's symptoms are being recorded in that conversation and entered into the note, so that's an actionable benefit of AI right now, is that there are going to be some notes that have improved content because of AI, and that will help us have better data. And our data managers will not be pulling their hair out because things that should be in the note aren't.
Is NCI money coming through? Are you waiting, or has it been changing hands?
We just applied. We're but of course that only pays for a certain proportion of this clinical trial costs. And Hawaii is particularly a problem because what happened was, historically, because no patients are being treated at the cancer center, so there's no revenue or anything, and all that's in the hospitals. So the hospitals were paying some money to support clinical trials, but then we're also giving them some money back on subcontracts. So the cancer center in the state was paying the additional costs. But as that's developed and there's been some financial issues, we're particularly at risk, maybe even more so than other sites. I think it's a particular problem for us.
But you're current as far as NCI payments.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're current, and I think we have a good relationship. I think we've done a good job serving, our community, and we really like our new leader. I mean, we love Warda. Brandy is phenomenal. You should interview her sometime. She is a real powerhouse, and she's really taken Warda's vision, and she's really works with the community. And the biggest thing that she does is that she wants to be sure that the studies can be really done in the community setting, that they're not only can be done in the university setting. Because the whole thing about NCORP trials and the things the purpose of them is to increase accrual, but it's to make sure that our advances can be implemented and can be done in the community setting. And there are still a lot of problems, because I can give you my whole philosophy about that, but which is basically that a lot of studies are done with research support, and ultimately we have to go to implementation studies with clinical support to really show that the advances can really be translated. Things like geriatric assessment, things like that, which is a new trial looking to see how that can really be done. Anyway, I'm kind of going around like a ping pong ball, but we really like Brandy, and we love Warda, but we really like Brandy, and we hope that she'll stay on as our director and kind of in the.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I want to echo that praise for and it's Dr. Brandy Heckman-Stoddard, for listeners who may not be steeped in NCORP, but she is very good at getting to the heart of things and supporting our sites, and I really appreciate that she's come in to fill some very, very big shoes and fill them and make them her own in a really difficult federal environment. As far as funding, they say that they will release a NOFO, a Notice of Funding Opportunity, in late spring. I think Memorial Day, which is this weekend, is the official start of summer. And I don't think we're going to get that NOFO in the next 2 days. So it looks like it'll be pushed back again. They say that we'll have at least 30 days to write a grant. So
I think it'll be 60 days. I think she said 60. At the Alliance meeting, she used her body language to make it seem like which is a little different than before. You didn't see her dancing around there, but maybe your staff did. And she was like moving in a way to say, yeah, it's really going to be the new. But were you talking about the new grant, or are you talking about our funding levels?
Our new grant.
Yeah, I'm talking about the money that NCI should be transferring to you by now.
Oh, that's coming. The money we're not worried about, but the new grant, it's been delayed for more than a year, right? The new opportunity to go beyond. Right. Yeah. So now we're actually in our 12th. Well, we're in what, 7th year? No, 8th year. We're about to go into the 8th year, right?
Right, on a 6-year grant. So I think we were grant year 6, extension 1, and now we've applied for kind of bridge. I don't know if bridge funding is the right word, but to be grant year 6, extension 2.
Right. Mm-hmm. They're going to call it year 12, but that's just a semantic thing.
But we have had the money is still kept coming. So I haven't had to, I have talked to our administrators and let them know that there are changes, but so far the checks have cleared.
And you're paying salaries, you're not laying people off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's good to know, even though it's the NOFO is late. Whatever, it's a big change. I think they're also doing the same with the cancer center. Not the same, but
the research basis.
Yeah.
The research basis, yeah. But for the NCORP grant, the NCTN grant, I don't think they've even received the money for that. I'm not sure.
Last time I talked to any of the group chairs, they had just received the notices of award, and by the time this runs, they hope they will receive the money.
It was supposed to be March, I think, yeah.
But
so I'm not sure if it actually...
Notices of award are flowing now, and if not necessarily the money, but it's good to know that you're current on the NCI payments.
Yeah,
that's worrisome.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, is there anything I forgot to ask? Anything you'd like to add?
I think that the main thing that the NCORP has really done is, like we summarizes it is that being able to show the studies in the community, the fact that even in the rural setting, the outcomes, the survival is equal if they're on a clinical trial. Minority recruitment has historically been way better than industry. That's a major thing. However, if you look at Joe Unger's recent stuff, I'm a little bit concerned because it seems to be dropping from history. I think because of personalized medicine. I think maybe certain minority populations aren't assessing that. But I don't know if that's my concern. My main concern is making sure that the studies, that the results, like I said earlier, will be able to be implemented, with regular office staff in a time where there's resources or less in practice, that these, particularly in addition to treatment advances, other advances that Amy and I feel are really important, like geriatric assessment, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Amy, what did I forget to ask?
Yeah. So I think you covered a lot about NCORP, and I would just say, I think it's a really special place in the cancer research ecosystem. And the whole idea of cooperative groups and cooperation, that we can enroll the one patient with one mutation that's in the upstate of South Carolina and the 2 or 3 that might be in Hawaii. And you put together enough of those patients around the country and you can make real advances. I love the statistic that we've cut cancer death rates by so much over the past decades, and NCORP's been a big part of that. So I'm really proud of it, and I'm up. I think there are challenges, and certainly there are times I lose sleep, but I sleep better knowing that there are a lot of people that care about the work that we do. Both at the NCI, in government, our patients care about the work that we do. And I do think that together the future is bright, as cliche as that might sound. I really do believe that.
Yep. Let's hope you're right.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for taking your time to talk with me. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul.